Hey everybody! So in a previous video I recently released, I talked about how watching Survivor for the first time taught me some things about social intelligence and emotional intelligence. Now in this video I want to dive deeper into that and tell you some of the most amazing insights I've learned after watching a couple more seasons of Survivor, especially the seasons featuring the winners at war. That was the most recent season, and they had all the champions together. Um, Now, there will be some spoilers in this, so if you don't want to be spoiled of Survivor stuff, you can not watch. But I figure most of you wouldn't care either way. You're just here to learn about social intelligence, or maybe you've already seen those episodes of Survivor. Anyhow, one thing I've learned is that it doesn't necessarily map onto real life in a lot of ways because the game is highly deceitful and filled with deceit and trickery and lies and backstabbing. I think in that way, it doesn't map into the real world because oftentimes, to succeed, you do it the honorable way in the real world by building that reputation. And that reputation, after it builds for 10, 20, 30 years, turns into a personal brand, a corporate brand, maybe both, that allows you to sell things for a premium, make connections, and basically make your life easier in many ways from a financial standpoint. That's what I've learned through my studies of business and success. And of course, without lying and cheating, you don't break the rules and you don't go to jail as well, and your company continues to thrive. However, that being said, I think there are certain things in the game that really map towards reality. And after watching a few seasons, I watched Kagayan, I watched Winners at War, I'm starting Heroes vs. Villains, and I'm halfway through the Season 7 Cook Island series. And what I've learned is that there's a bunch of factors that definitely map towards reality, towards career success, towards personal relationship success. And one of those is building likability. Now, that may seem obvious to you, but really, is it really that obvious? I know plenty of people who really don't care if they rub people the wrong way, or they don't even notice, and it pisses a lot of people off, and it's not harmonious. I mean, some of these people, just their personalities rub people the wrong way. They just say what they want in offensive ways. And then there's others who, they understand likability, but how much effort do they actually put into creating those likable bonds? And you'll notice in the seasons that likability is one of those factors that ebbs and flows and helps. But there are other times when, you just know that things aren't going to work with someone. And then because of that, you have to make do with whatever situation you have, which sometimes means just getting rid of someone or taking them out. Now, here's where the spoilers come in, and maybe the most amazing lesson I learned from Survivor. One of them. And it has to do with kind of how to form social bonds with someone. This is something I've struggled with or tried to improve for a while now. And before watching this show, I had this like somewhat belief. It wasn't a solid belief, but I felt like I was left out oftentimes, or I couldn't bond with everyone unless I had some level of connection in terms of every possible topic of the main categories that you could converse with someone. The reason I thought that was because, sometimes when I'm with my peers, or I'm at work, there'll be times when some people will be talking about football or some TV show, and I wouldn't have any knowledge around that. And because of that, I felt left out of these very heated, passionate conversations because I couldn't talk about football or anything like that. And so, because of that, I asked a few people, for feedback. Well, a couple people, and one person in particular who's very charismatic. This guy's my manager. He told me how, for him, how he does it is he's able to kind of talk about a little bit of almost anything. He has enough knowledge of like almost any little thing, whether that's dogs, puppies, football, baseball, a TV show, that he can form some level of connection with you regarding whatever or most things. And so that was one approach, and one that I thought, that was the way to go. And because of that, partially because of that, I ended up catching up with a lot of these big TV shows, The Office, Game of Thrones. And, I enjoyed it for the most part. But then I got to an extent where I realized, I wasn't really as left out as I thought. Now that I knew about these topics, I would talk about them, and I would expect, oh, and we're going to have these lively conversations about this TV show now that I understand it. And usually the conversations just didn't last that long, anyways. 20 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes, and then they were off to some other TV show that I didn't watch or some other topic. And I realized, you know what, I wasn't even left out that much. I just perceived I was. And there's always five other TV shows that someone else is watching that I am not watching, and I can't keep up with it all. And you know what? Although football is cool to an extent, I really still don't know much about football, and I don't really care about it. And maybe that's okay. Why does every guy have to like football? They don't. And that's okay. And many do not. Now, how does this relate to Survivor? Well, here's the thing. So here's where the spoilers come in. This is a big spoiler, but Tony Vlachos, he wins Winners at War, which is when all the champions come to compete against each other. And so now he's kind of crowned as the king of Survivor. And he's one of my favorite characters. I hope he comes back. And now he has to deal with this big target on his head. So maybe I shouldn't call him the king, but he is, the first man to win 2 times in Survivor, especially against other champions. And so, he has definitely some skill, some social game, some physical game, a little bit of everything at the game of Survivor. And I was watching one of his interviews afterwards, after the show. And what he said is that, for him, there's a lot of big things that he just had no context around. He didn't like sports. He never left his city, so he doesn't really like to talk about travel. And these are big topics that others care about. However, he didn't need that. What he did have, and that could connect with other people on, was his love for his family. And so what he did was, when he saw those moments where he could bond over family, because everyone else had a family of children too that were waiting at home for them, he would bond on those moments. And then when sports or travel or something else came up, he would kind of pull back and then get out of there. And it was enough of a bond to really bond with these people on a strong enough level. And he also didn't. It was always a balancing act for him, not just for this, but other things. But in this context, he didn't want to be overbearing as well. So, he didn't want to bond too much with any one person or come across overbearing. So it also kind of worked in his favor. He bonded with what he could, which was the family thing. And then he left when the other stuff came up, and that was good enough. And I found that very insightful for me, as someone who never really saw himself as socially that skilled, but would like to get better, because I realized, you know what, I don't necessarily have to be this master of all these different topics that other people talk about. In fact, when I've tried to do that, it's exhausting, because you have to sometimes pretend like you're really interested in sewing or knitting, and even if you know not a lot about it, it comes off a little disingenuous. And even if it doesn't, like sometimes it doesn't, they can't tell that you're not as interested. They're like, oh my gosh. And then you end up talking about knitting or sewing or whatever it is. Maybe it's I don't know, Pilates, and you are bored to death and they can't tell, and then you end up sitting there for an hour talking about this thing just to bond with them when you don't care about that, and that's wasting your time. You're not feeling good about it. So why put on this act? Sometimes just be okay with not liking something and being forthright with it. And that's something that I don't think is really mentioned in these books, like How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is really, when you think about it, not really a book on winning friends, but a book on kind of getting people to like you and network for your career, which is a different thing. It forges a different relationship than a strong friendship. Because with a business networking thing, a career thing, yeah, who cares if you pretend you like knitting or Pilates? But as a friend, you want to be true to someone else, um, and maybe even in a real career situation, maybe it's best to be honest as well and not listen to Dale Carnegie's book, because sometimes you just want to be honest with what you care about and what you really hate and dislike. I know a lot of young women who like yoga, and I don't know why, they just love yoga, love it. And quite frankly, I've done a few yoga classes and stuff, and um, it's good for me, but I don't like sitting there for an hour. So there's there's a line between being honest and disingenuous, and I guess the big lesson is just being okay with not being an expert at all things. Yes, I'll still try to build my knowledge in all these topics to an extent, because it can be useful, and you never know. I found some hobbies that I didn't think I would like until I dabble in these. But learning from Tony, I realized I don't have to be this kind of chameleon character who knows all these things, and in a way, that's not even the most genuine way of doing it. So, hopefully that helped. Survivor is a very confusing thing. A lot of things I just can't really pick out and parse out, no matter how much I analyze. Like, what's the right strategy? What's the wrong one? Because there's just so many factors, so many people switching sides, so many things that you think would work and don't work, that it's hard to really piece together. But I think there's definitely certain amounts of thinking and play that I think work well. Usually, the people who are never thinking two steps ahead and just going with the crowd, they end up getting sidelined. So, thanks for watching. Hope you found this video valuable. I'll see you in the next video. Social intelligence is important for your career success and your life success.